Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems, Amazon TV, and YouTube. Join B Alan Bourgeois for today's show. Hi, and welcome to the Indie Beacon Show. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I appreciate you either watching or listening to our show. Today we have a gentleman who is from England who's written a medieval romance novel. That's not your typical romance. Today, a gentleman by the name of Tagai Tarutin. And I apologize. I warned him ahead of time I would probably mess up his name, and I really do apologize. It's one of those names that is a tongue twister. So I'm going to actually let you say it properly so everybody knows how to say your name again.
Tagai Tarutin.
Okay. So Tagai, you are a new author. And, you know, let's admit you're, my age and stuff, so you're older than most authors. So what got you into the writing? What was the whole purpose of starting a book?
Well, I've written quite a lot of things stored on memory sticks. I've started quite a few stories, but I have to get inspiration, and sometimes I'll start writing and I can take a long time over writing articles or books. And sometimes I'll leave it and walk away from it. I don't write really for economic reasons. This particular book, Hellelal and Hildebrand, which I have published, I wrote it for myself really. But somebody had seen it and said, why don't you get it published? So I did, but it took me a long while to write it, about 5 years, because I did a lot of research on it to make sure some of there's a lot of historical fact and biblical connections in the book. And it took a lot of research. For instance, there's one chapter that deals with Princess Hellelal shoeing a horse. And I had to do a lot of research into the work of a farrier, exactly what was involved in shoeing a horse. And in this case, it would be a knight's war horse. And I had to be careful with the facts, and it took me a long while to write it because I kept altering it. I'd wake up in bed, think of ideas, and I'd write it down on a notepad. I'd come down to the computer, write it, and I might have second thoughts and thought, no, I'll alter that. And that was just one chapter. And then there was another chapter where I introduced a side saddle. And I did a lot of research on that. It took me a long time to write it because the general consensus of opinion was it didn't appear until the latter Middle Ages, the 17th, 18th century. Well, I did some research on it and I'd introduced it into this story, which was the 13th century. But I did some research and there is no proof that it wasn't invented earlier. Nobody can get me on it, you see, because I wanted to be sure that nobody would say, side saddles weren't introduced then. But I did some research on it, and so I inserted it into the story because it was important. And then I introduced some biblical connections from the Bible in the story, and also art pictures I introduced. The actual picture that you see on the front of the book is the meeting on the turret steps, is the title of it, and it was painted by Frederick Burton in 1864. And it was such an unusual picture that it got me writing this story because the picture is based on an old Danish legend called Hellelal and Hildebrand, or Hellelil and Hildebrand, but I settled on the name Hellelal and Hildebrand. And it's the story of a fictional princess, well, it's a legend, a Danish princess whose father has to leave the kingdom. So he enlists 12 knights from across Europe to be her bodyguards. One of them is an English prince by the name of Hildebrand. And what happens is, and a relationship forms between Princess Hallisle and Hildebrand, who incidentally is the leader of the 12 bodyguards, and it leads to a confrontation with her 7 brothers who are knights. But a fight ensures in the story, and he slaughters her 7 brothers. But I won't go into any more than that because I'm giving away the plot of the story. But the meeting on the turret steps, the picture, it's actually in the National Gallery of Ireland, the picture. And it was voted the most popular picture in Ireland. It is on YouTube, actually. And if you look at the article, it appears that people get engaged in front of the picture. It's such an evocative picture. So I used it as the front cover of the book. I had to pay for the license. And also there's a picture in the book of the Wild Hunt of Odin. And that picture, the original, hangs in the museum in Oslo in Norway. And I had to pay for the license for that. It's all these things are incorporated in the story. And the book that I showed you here is the 2nd edition because it actually did come out last year, but I didn't promote it because there was 2 chapters that I wanted to add to the story, but I couldn't think how to write them. But I did in the end, and it worked out quite well. And I had the book reissued as a 2nd edition with these 2 extra chapters. And I've spent a little bit of money promoting it. But that's it took me a long time to write because I did a lot of research. And there's some geographical places from Eastern Europe and Asia, the Altai Mountains within the story. And it's primarily a tragic story of a romance, but there is an ending that I think fits perfectly well with that picture. But I won't say any more than that.
All right, I see. I've got a challenge here of trying to pull it out of you for the next few minutes.
Yes.
Let's go back a little bit to a couple questions. You are in Europe. Specifically, which country are you in?
I'm in England.
You are in England, okay. And your background is definitely not writing, even though you have written several things. You've actually written different types of books, not just this romance, but other stuff. So let's go back to your background. How much of your background played into your writing career?
Well, I've always been interested in classical music and old films and adventure stories. And I criticize films a lot, but I'm always writing things down. I've got by the side of me, you can't see it, but I've got 10 memory sticks and they're all full of stories that I've written. I've started 2 stories. One funny enough, deals with the disappearance of the horse from North America, because it did happen in the distant past. That's fact, but they don't know what caused the disappearance. And I've started to write a story of that event happening again. But I've gone on to something else. It's just the way my mind works. But what got me into writing, I've been in sales all my life, but I've always I've got a multitude of books in my bedrooms upstairs. My main interest is history and art. And that's why I've included in this picture, there's several references to famous art pictures. And also I've been interested as well in ballet. That's another interest of mine. And I have introduced a chapter in the book of ballet. And it is in that book, Hellelal and Hildebrand. But really, I suppose what got me into writing was seeing that and finishing a book in its entirety was seeing that picture on the front cover. That's what got me into it, because it was such an unusual story. And also, the Danish legend is not very long, and I've expanded it and added to it and made a novel out of it. But that's a lot of books. I do pick them up when I go into shops of new edition. It's something new that's come out, and I'll pick them up and I'll flick through it to see what it's like. And a lot of them, I shouldn't criticize really, should I? But you've gone quiet for some reason. I can't hear you.
That's all right. I was enjoying listening to you, but I will stop
Yes.
because we are at that point where we do need to let the sponsors do their thing. When we come back, we'll talk more about the book and about your name. All right, we'll be right back.
Yes.
Authors Marketing Guild, a membership-owned company where authors can learn how to better market and sell their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? Well, during COVID, almost all of us have been doing just that. I'm Charlotte Canyon, award-winning author, actress, and speaker. And my book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, shows you how you can revive, thrive, and survive with 4 golden rules. You have to love one another. You have to respect one another. You have to have patience with one another. And most of all, you've got to forgive one another. I'm Charlotte Canyon, and I approve this message.
Publishing marketing package for authors. $1,500 value, save 40% now. Includes a 6-piece marketing kit of 250 bookmarks, 250 business cards, 250 postcards, 1 table banner, 1 table runner, and 50 download cards, plus book cover design, ebook creation, PDF setups, upload to Ingram Spark, scroll placement, video commercial, and interview on IBS. Plus much more. Email bourgeoismedia@look.com for details or bourgeoismedia.com.
To embrace your children's imagination, check out Diane Floyd Bame's books for kids. There's The Moonling Adventures, all about the animals in the Serengeti. And then there's Harry the Camel, learning to love yourself just the way you are. Then The Little Girl in the Moon. There's one about friendship, another one about the big ideas, which is an inspirational story. And then Tour Tycho Town, right there in Tycho Crater on the moon. All of Diane Floyd Bame's books are available at B4R Store.
Do you send book sales to a company that takes most of your money? Do you want a bookstore that supports you? Want to earn more money from your book sales? Introducing a bookstore for indie authors and small press only. Earn up to 80% of your book sales and learn how to better market yourself. Join the 150 authors already signed up to earn their fair share at b4r.store. Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems, Amazon TV, and YouTube. Join B Alan Bourgeois for today's show. Hi, and welcome back to the Indie Beacon Show. Your host is B Alan Bourgeois. I appreciate you either listening or watching our show. Today we have a gentleman who's been talking about his new book and about a few other things. He's got a very interesting name, and so I'm really curious about it. So we're going to dive into the name a little bit. I'm just really curious, what is the history and how did you come about that name?
It's an old Slavic name, Tagai Tarutin. It's an old Slavic name, and the name goes with the history behind this book, the history that's talked about in this book, because a lot of the majority of the story, 90%, takes place in a country that borders on Kievan, Russia, of the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th century. And Tagai Tarutin is an old Slavic name. And the brothers of Princess Helalile in the book, they're old Slavic names, which I've used. And I think it works quite well for that, but I would say that, wouldn't I? But I think it works quite well. There's a lot to say, really, but I tried to make this story different from anything that's been done before. Totally different.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question because you said it's definitely romance, but it's not what people would expect the romance to be because there's a different twist at the end. Is that right?
Yes.
So why the twist? Why not a typical romance?
Well, there's a twist and a tragedy in the story. She loses her brothers, and she loses Hildebrand, and she herself dies. And there's a Teutonic knight who's a hero in the story called von Altenburg, who's only got one eye because the rest of his face was sliced off when he was in the Crusades attacking Constantinople. And two Varangian defenders attacked him and sliced off his face. But he was saved by Prince Hildebrand, who was also a mercenary knight serving with the Crusades. And that's how they came together in this party of 12 knights who were Helalile's bodyguards. But the twist is in the story that the scene that you see in this picture is replicated in the last chapter, but the roles are reversed. The roles are reversed. But
now you're not giving away too much, are you?
Well, I won't say any more than that. I can get carried away talking about it. This is the trouble. The ballet scene, by the way, in the book, I've been told that on my website there is 2 reviews of the book by Alexandra Yuzhanova in Russia, and also Anatoly in Nizhny Novgorod, and they've read it. They read English, and they like the story, and they liked this chapter on the ballet. I've stretched the truth really with the ballet scene, but I wanted to do it because it works in the story. But I can't really say any more than that without giving things away.
That's all right, because I have some questions for you.
Yes, okay.
There is a lot of historical research that you have done. How challenging was that to go back several hundred years to do research for things? You know, you'd mentioned the Smith doing the shoeing of the horse and other things. And that really must have been a bit of a challenge.
Well, it was. You see, I wrote in the story that Helalile, now her father, had left the castle for a long time and took her brothers with him. And she was left running the kingdom with the help of the 12 knights from the castle. But one of the things she wanted to do, I should tell you this story. She wanted to shoe a horse, but she doesn't tell the knights. And I've written into the story, I've described it in like an allegorical painting, that the 12 knights find her, and she's in the workshop with the farrier making a horseshoe, and her figure is lit by the glow from the coals of the fire, and she's got a leather apron around her waist and the bonnet of a peasant woman on top of her golden locks. And the knights are watching her, and she can see that she'd noticed that they've ventured into the blacksmith shop and are watching her. And she's being told how to make the shoe by the farrier who's giving her stentorian instructions. And she's always wanted to learn how to shoe a horse. And I've described it in the manner of an allegorical painting, and I think it works quite well. But there is a twist to this story in that the spirits from Arcadia who get involved, and they create the situation where Princess Hellelisle and Hildebrand form a relationship, because that is what they wanted to do. But it causes a tragedy in the story. But I daren't say any more than that. She bears a son, I'll say this, she bears a child, which is a son who becomes Prince Hagen. And I won't say who the father is, because it gives away the story. But I've described the scene where she's prisoner in the bower of the castle, and she gives birth to this son while a prisoner. But Abbot Jurian, he's another character in the story. He is a witness to the birth because he'll become heir to the kingdom. Well, I've described how Leonardo da Vinci, it was perfect scene for him to paint. I won't say any more than that. I've described it. It took me a long time to describe all these things, and I hope I've written it so that people will find it interesting. It took me a long while to edit it, to proofread it. I had somebody proofread it, and they said I wanted to add more dialogue. Well, I wouldn't do it, because my argument was that we don't know how they spoke 800 years ago. And I didn't want page after page of dialogue. So I kept it to a minimum. But if I let sort of people in their 20s and 30s edit it, I'd end up having a story that's Disneyfied. And I didn't want that. I didn't want a story like that. I mean, films today, action films, if I see another car chase, I shall throw a brick through the television screen, because I've never seen so many films with car chases in it. Nobody's got any imagination anymore. The hero of the story, he'll have took to the bottle because his wife's left him. He's got a daughter. And he's the action man hero. And the times I've seen that storyline, and then you'll get the heroine in a story, and she'll have a son. It's so contrived and repetitive that I despair, honestly. But and bad language. There's no language in my book, bad language, because I don't agree with it. There's no overt sex. I've not put that in. It's just intimated at. The closest it comes to that is in the ballet scene. But I don't, it's only implied, it's not graphic at all.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, this is a perfect spot for us to stop, let our sponsors do their thing, and we'll be right back. Authors Marketing Guild, a membership-owned company where authors can learn how to better market and sell their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com. Marianne Fairmouth is a career consultant with 30 years experience in the national recruiting world, a multi-award-winning author in multi-genres, and a speaker that gives presentations to help you succeed. Her book, Revolutionary Recruiting, made the top 20 global list of recruiting books. Find her on Amazon, your favorite bookstore, or at fairmouth.com. Lone Star Festival, where Texas authors, artists, and creatives come together for a Texas-sized event. Join us on May 29, 2021 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Seguin Coliseum, Seguin, Texas. Free for everyone. Produced by Texas Authors Institute of History. Sponsored by B4R.store, Authors Marketing Guild, and the City of Seguin. More information at lonestar.bookfestival.network.
Hi, I'm Rox Berkey. I write the Enigma series with my co-author. We write as Brakefield and Berkey. Today we have 12 books in this series, with The Enigma Threat being the newest release on January the 8th of 2021. It's an exciting book that goes to the next generation, and we hope that you'll check it out and all the other books in the Enigma series. Thank you.
Lone Star Festival, a Texas-sized event. Meet authors, artists, and Texas musicians in the City of Seguin on May 29, 2021. Sponsored by Real Seguin, Coffee Shop, Authors Marketing Guild, B4R.store, and Dear Texas. Produced by Texas Authors Institute of History. Join us and get your free tickets online at lonestar.book.
Hello, I am the author Denise Bryson. My first book is The Things That Cross My Mind, Inspirational Poetry with Life Lessons. And then my audiobook is Love's Reality, and it is also inspirational poetry with a jazzy flair. And then my new book is The Sex, the Lies, and the Soul Ties. They're really short stories written from a poetic expression. And then I have my first children book series, the Blinky series, which the first book is called Meet the Coins, and it is both in English and Spanish. And then the new book, From Coins to Bills. I am the author, Denise Bryson.
Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems, Amazon TV, and YouTube. Join B Alan Bourgeois for today's show. Hi, and welcome to the Indie Beacon Show. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I appreciate you either watching or listening to our show. Today we have a gentleman who is from England who's written a medieval romance novel. That's not your typical romance. Tagai, go ahead and let people know where they can find the book, if you have a website, things of that nature.
Yes, the website is www.hellalileandhildebrand.com, all one word, obviously, hellalileandhildebrand.com. There's an introductory video that was filmed at Berkeley Castle in Gloucestershire, England. There was an introductory video to introduce the story and the main characters. The main characters is Hellalile, Princess Hellalile, her father the king, King Thorstein, Prince Hildebrand, Ethla, who's a Down syndrome girl found in the wilderness. She's in the story. And then there's von Altenburg, the Teutonic Knight, one of the other bodyguards, whose face is obscured with a cloth, save for one eye, to hold his brutal injury. And he gives in the appearance of a leper.
And we're going to stop it there because I don't want to give away too much of the story.
No.
Talked pretty good about it. But as far as social media, how can people find you to reach out to you with questions, or can they find that on your website?
Yeah, Facebook, Tagai Tarutin, LinkedIn, Tagai Tarutin, and also they can get me via the website.
Wonderful. And you're working on lots
Do you
of
want me to repeat the website?
stuff. What is the current one you're working on?
I'm working on one, and it's in this book there is a lady in waiting called Runa. I've written that into the story, and I'm writing a book about this saga, but through Runa's eyes, the lady in waiting. I've been writing that because there's a lot in this book that I've written, Hellalile and Hildebrand, where I've kept it to a minimum. If And there's a lot of scenes behind closed doors. And I wanted to write about those. If I'd have included it in the original book, it would have been the length of War and Peace, about 800 pages. So I didn't want to do that. It's a comfortable 80,000 words, this book, and I think that's the optimum length of the
The
book.
book you're working on, do you have a plan on when it's going to be released?
Well, I think it's going to be 12 months minimum.
Okay, so
It's going to be 12.
22.
It's going to be, yes. The one about the disappearance of the wild horse from North America, I was going to include 3 characters in the story. But it's an Englishman writing about something that happened in North America, and I've got to be absolutely correct about it. And there's a lot of scenes that I've written of how a rancher, an American in Wyoming, is conscious that his horses on the range are showing signs of some disturbance. Something's affecting them, and it's the oncoming event where all these horses will leave North America in a massive stampede.
And we're going to stop it right there because I don't want to ruin it.
No.
And on top of it, unfortunately, we have also run out of time.
That's very kind.
Thank you very much for being with us, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you for watching the Indie Beacon Show. It is produced by B Alan Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild, copyright 2021. Voiceover by Randy James and B Alan Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of this show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for this show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music by Always Rejoice by Ram